Shopify grows your business no matter how far or big you grow. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Whether you're selling your fans' next favorite shirt or an exclusive piece of podcast merch, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in.
Summer is supposed to be an opportunity to slow down, but when you look at your kids, you can't help but notice that your kids are growing up fast. Help them build independence as they grow with Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families, where parents can keep an eye on kids' money habits while kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. It's the easy, convenient way to raise financially smart kids. Get your first month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/Spotify.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
Suddenly, we heard footsteps trudging slowly down the dirt road in the alleyway. Her cries were so close, they reverberated in my ears, and I felt like I was drowning in her sorrow. I paused and looked at his face, and that was the scariest moment of all. There was no reaction from him. He just stared at us with the same angry expression as before. From Killer Podcasts, true tales of horror, bizarre happenings, unexplainable events, this is Disturbed. Hello, patrons. I'm Doug Bailey, host of Disturbed True Horror, and welcome to the first episode of Midnight Murmurs. I'm here to share a few of the most terrifying stories that you, the listeners, submitted. Real tales of terror sourced from you, our beloved Disturbed community. Without further ado, sit back, listen closely, and dive into our Midnight Murmurs, Episode 1. If you like what you hear, go check out our Patreon for future episodes. Our first story comes from Nikolai. My girlfriend and I had just moved into a fairly large college town in West Virginia in August, several weeks before classes resumed. We were living in a student housing co-op, and most of the other residents wouldn't move in till early September. Nevertheless, the bars were open and there was still a decent enough amount of people in town to make the nightlife vibrant. My girlfriend and I had two friends who worked in a club downtown, and one night they asked if they could crash at our place after they finished work. We agreed and offered to leave our front door unlocked for them because they wouldn't be coming over till about 4 a.m. I was a college ice hockey player at the time, so I didn't feel unsafe leaving the door unlocked. Famous last words. That night, I was woken by the sound of an unfamiliar voice. I groggily rolled over to check the time and saw that it was 3:30 a.m. I turned to my girlfriend next to me and gently shook her awake, whispering, "Do you hear that?" After a moment, she confirmed that she too heard the noises coming from the living room. We both listened intently for a few moments, and we could distinctly hear a man muttering. It seemed like he was conversing with himself, but none of what he said made any sense. After a minute or two, I got out of bed. Grabbing my phone off the bedside table, I turned my flashlight on and stepped out of the bedroom door, shining the light down the hall. There, standing in our living room, was a massive man I had never seen before in my life. He was about 18 to 21 years old, 220 pounds, and 6'2", with a large gash on his nose. The injury, still fresh, was pouring a trail of red blood down his shirtless chest and dripping onto the floor. Despite being tired, intimidated, and about 7 inches shorter than the intruder, I stood my ground, demanding, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The man didn't respond, just gazed at me with confusion. "You need to leave now," I insisted. My girlfriend stepped into the doorway behind me and turned on the hall light. Suddenly, the man's expression changed to anger, and he charged at us. My girlfriend and I stepped back into our room, and as I swung the door to close it, his head slammed into it. He flung the door open before I could lock it, and I found myself in a wrestling match with this bloody intruder. I was the first to take him to the ground and get on top of him, but as I tried to pin him down, he quickly overpowered me and pulled my head to his chest in a headlock. I felt my airway compressing as I realized the severity of the situation. But luckily, his blood made me slick, and I was able to get out of his grasp. We both got to our feet, and I pushed him up against the wall. I wound back and with all my strength delivered 3 hard blows to his face. I may have been significantly shorter than him, but thanks to all those years on the ice, this wasn't my first fistfight. After my fist connected with his jaw for the 3rd time, I paused and looked at his face. And that was the scariest moment of all. There was no reaction from him. It's as if nothing had happened at all. He didn't flinch, his muscles didn't clench. He just stared at us with the same angry expression as before. After what felt like 30 minutes, I managed to get behind him, lock his neck between my arms, and pull him away from the door enough to allow my girlfriend to run past. She rushed to the kitchen and came back with a kitchen knife in each hand. I must have blacked out from the adrenaline, because the next thing I remember is dragging him by his feet to the front door while my girlfriend held him at knife point. He grabbed onto the ledge of the wall, and I had his whole body at 180 degrees in the air, trying to pull him from it. My girlfriend cut his fingers. His grip broke, and he fell to the ground. I dragged him to the front door by his belt till he managed to get free and made one more break for it. I grabbed him by the ankles and with pure adrenaline finally pulled him out the front door. I ran back into the apartment, slamming the door and locking it. Within 2 seconds, he was throwing his body against our front door, trying to get in. We ran to the bathroom, locked ourselves in, and called 911. As we spoke to the operator, the sound of him banging on our front door echoed through the hall. Thankfully, the police arrived in time to arrest him. After they had taken our statements and left, our friends finally arrived, shortly after 4 a.m. We took stock of our apartment, standing in the doorway with our friends, looking down at the swaths of blood staining the floors in every direction. I started following the trail of blood and realized the story playing out there. He had gone into every room in our apartment before I noticed, including our bedroom. So to the druggy stranger who came into our apartment and painted it red, let's not meet. Story 2 is from Eos. When I was 11 years old, my mother sent me to Mexico for the summer to live with my extended family and learn about the culture there. I mostly wanted to hang out with my brother and our cousins, but as someone who's assigned female at birth and grew up in a household where it wasn't ladylike to play outside with the boys, I stuck inside with my tias and Nana. We mostly cleaned or made food, And when we weren't doing that, we would be stitching clothes or making jewelry that my Nana sold as I listened to them gossip. My Nana was the head of household, very kind but very traditional and extremely superstitious. One night, the majority of my family was gone, and it was just me, my little cousins, and my tia Raquel. The boys had fallen asleep by 10 p.m., but tia Raquel let me stay up late with her to keep her company in the backyard. The yard was large with no grass, mostly just dirt and gravel. There were 3 big trees in a triangle. 2 of the trees were lined up together, closer to the tall fence. The fence was a flimsy metal fence that had miraculously remained intact for years. The hammock was hung between the 2 trees closer to the fence. We lay in the hammock together, watching videos on her phone. Suddenly, in the distance, I heard an eerie cry. At first, I thought it was the neighbors a couple streets down throwing a late-night party, or drunks coming back from a cantina. So I tried to ignore it. Raquel heard it too and paused the video to listen. Then we heard the cry again, closer this time, as if it was right around the corner. It wasn't a drunk person wailing their sorrows away. This was an extremely sad cry, coming from a woman. I remember the feeling that I had. Yes, I was scared, and yes, wondering who that cry belonged to. It made me shiver. But the cry mostly made me feel sad and in a way, angry. My tia looked at me wide-eyed, and I gave her the same expression. It wasn't until we heard the cry getting even closer that we finally gave each other a look that confirmed our mutual thoughts. If you don't know what La Llorona is, it's a Mexican folktale meant to scare children into coming home before the streetlights come on. It's said she roams the streets looking for her dead children, and if she sees any children, she takes them and drowns them in the nearest body of water, just as she did to her own children. The cries we heard sounded the same as how the sobs and wails of La Llorona had been described to us. We both were terrified. My tia slowly put her hand over my mouth as she saw tears coming down my face and brought a finger to her mouth. We both lay quiet and frozen in the hammock. I prayed the hammock wouldn't swing to indicate our presence and hoped that the darkness would conceal us. Suddenly, we heard footsteps trudging slowly down the dirt road in the alleyway, right on the other side of the fence. Her cries were so close, they reverberated in my ears, and I felt like I was drowning in her sorrow. We were frozen in the hammock, the minutes dragging on like an eternity. Slowly, her weeping became more distant, and Raquel finally gathered the courage to leap out of the hammock, dragging me along with her. We both bolted into the house, and she locked the door behind us. I turned to face the metal door with its big frosted glass window. My tia didn't turn her head. She just stared at the window, and I stared with her. Then we saw it, exactly what we feared. The silhouette of someone with a veil on her head approaching the window. The blurred glass prevented us from making out any features, yet it seemed like she was staring straight at us. My heart was pounding and my mouth went dry. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Tia Raquel grabbed my arm and yanked me into the bedroom where my cousins slept. I started hyperventilating and she frantically whispered, "Don't make a sound." We lay in bed, pulled the covers over our heads, and eventually I fell asleep. The next day, when the rest of our family came back, I told them everything that happened, but they thought I was making it up. I asked my tia to back me up, but all she did was giggle and roll her eyes, as if I was just a child who had a vivid dream. But it wasn't a dream. I know it wasn't. I looked at my Nana to see if she believed me, and her eyes remained on my tia, who was nervously cleaning the house. My Nana never said anything to me, but something about her stare made me think she was the only one who believed me. Now that I'm older, I try to rationalize my experience. Maybe it was just someone pretending to be La Llorona, to scare people in the neighborhood. I don't know. For the rest of my stay in Mexico, I never again left the house after dark. Story 3. Melody. In July of 2019, I was 22 years old, living on my own for the first time. My dad was gracious enough to let me stay in my parents' second home in New Jersey, which was also my childhood home. I was moving from my parents' current home in Maryland to my old neighborhood, filled with memories and nostalgia. My dad asked me for $500 a month for rent until I got on my feet. It was the perfect location since I had just enrolled at a nearby college for the fall semester. The house was known as the abandoned home in the neighborhood, since we only stopped by on the occasional road trip pit stop. Whenever we did visit, we always saw evidence of loiterers around the yard. It was no different when I moved in. I walked around the yard and found empty Red Bull cans, Cheetos bags, cigarette butts, a used condom, and even a smashed watermelon. The interior of the house also needed plenty of work. My dad had stripped it apart years ago in an attempted renovation, which he eventually abandoned, leaving a wreck. Nevertheless, I was grateful to have a whole house to myself for very low rent. For a while, things were going pretty well. I got a new job and made new friends. However, trash and random items kept popping up in my yard, and I was constantly cleaning it up. I asked my neighbors to keep an eye out for anything strange. One night I was in the kitchen making some quick oven-baked dinner when I heard a crash in the basement. I jolted from the noise and was hesitant to investigate. I tried to calm down, thinking maybe something just fell on its own. The basement was still stuffed with my dad's belongings and also served as my laundry room. I tried to shake off the feeling and went into the living room to watch Netflix. Over the noise of the TV, I swore I heard scraping sounds, like something was being dragged across the basement. My heart started pounding. Everything in me was screaming that I needed to find the source of the unsettling noises. I crept to the basement door and opened it, wincing as it made a loud screeching sound. I shone my phone flashlight down the wooden steps and listened. Nothing. I told myself I was just overthinking, and I went back into the kitchen to wash my dishes. Then I headed upstairs to take my signature stress-free bath. I lit a candle and filled the bathtub with hot water, stress relief salts, bubble bath soap. The entire bathroom smelled like spearmint and eucalyptus. I sank into the tub and tried my best to relax and release the tension from my mind. Then I heard it, the faint but distinct sound of the basement door creaking open. My eyes widened and my heart stopped. What the fuck is that? I lay there frozen till I heard a crash in the kitchen. Then my body went into fight or flight mode, and I chose flight. I wrapped myself in a towel and I tiptoed to my bedroom across the hall. I shut the door behind me and locked it as I heard more noises coming from downstairs. The sounds started drifting closer to the stairs. When I heard heavy stomping rushing up the steps, my heart seemed to beat almost as loudly as the thudding steps. Then the person stopped at the top of the stairs. I heard a deep grunt, then slow footsteps coming down the hall. "I know where you are, girlie." You left a trail for me, a guttural male voice said, and I realized I'd left a trail of water from the bathroom in my bedroom. I heard him going through the other rooms upstairs and rummaging around. I searched for my phone, desperately, till I remembered where it was, and my blood ran cold. I had left it on the bathroom sink. I heard the sound of something smashing, then his footsteps coming back down the hallway. I saw the shadow of his feet under my door. I heard something sharp slowly scrape against the bedroom door. I'm calling the police, I screamed at him, terrified. With what phone? Was his smug reply. He slid my phone under the door, and I shivered in horror as I realized it was now bashed and completely useless. I'm not a religious person, but at that moment I was praying to anyone who would listen to my pleas. He left my door, and I could hear him ruining my house, cussing as he destroyed and dismantled everything in sight. Fuck! Oh, fuck! Oh, where is it? He yelled. He continued banging things around and screaming, where is it? His footsteps trudged downstairs and I stood paralyzed in fear. Was he leaving or just continuing his search? Should I make a run for it? But what if he caught me? Then, as if a miracle, I saw red and blue lights projected on my walls through the blinds. The man must have seen them too because he started losing it. Fuck! Damn it! I'm sorry! He screamed. Before I knew it, police were inside my house and the man's yelling was combined with the voices of 3 or 4 officers. Within moments, I heard a feminine voice outside my bedroom door. She identified herself as an officer and told me to come out. I opened the door, still shaking from disbelief and terror, but knowing I was safe now. The officer told me that my neighbor had happened to look out her window and see a large figure frantically looking around in my kitchen. She became concerned and called the police. It was a miracle that she looked at my house when she did, and I felt that my pleas were heard. The intruder's name was Mark. He was a local squatter and drug addict. The cops concluded that he had squatted at my house before and was probably a part of my loitering problem. Mark confessed to the police that he was going through a withdrawal. His only motive was to get a hold of more drugs. It has now been almost 5 years since his arrest, and I just received a letter informing me that his release date is in 1 month. So Mark, if you ever show your face on my property again, I'll be armed and ready. This has been Midnight Murmurs, a production of the Disturbed True Horror team at Killer Podcasts. Special thanks to our producers, Noah Fouts and Elizabeth Flood, our videographer, Kay Holmberg, and our audio engineer, Nathan Corson. Music designed by Noah Fouts. Sound designed by Nathan Corson. If you have a story you'd like to see on the show, send it to disturbedpodcast.com/submit. Link in the description. I've been your host, Doug Bailey. Thanks for listening. And remember, stay safe out there.
I'm Victoria Cash, and I want to invite you to a place called Lucky Land, where you can play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. So what are you waiting for? The best way to discover your luck is to spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com, that's LuckyLandSlots.com, and get lucky today. At Lucky Land, No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.